Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sacred Cards. Thank you so much for joining me today as I showcase my updated Nouvelle deck profile for October 2024. I love cooking up new recipes with this deck, and I've done some serious work testing and running different scenarios through test hands, matchups against every deck you could possibly think of to better understand the cards, theory, and perfect the ratios to the best of my ability. People seem to really like the deck, and in my biased opinion, it doesn't get enough attention, so I'm very fortunate to be someone amongst the community who can provide their thoughts and knowledge with the deck. I spent countless hours testing throughout the deck's existence. And one thing I've always noticed is no matter how much I cut down on the engine, I always have more than enough gas and resources to be able to access what I need, when I need it, and knowing which cards to recycle and which options and when. Something to take in consideration as I go through the deck list and the ratios I've chosen. Beginning with the dishes on the menu, the ritual monsters. Now we are running a single copy of Bouillabaisse de Nouvelles. Now, the level 1 and level 2 ritual monsters have the effect that if they are targeted by an effect or an attack, they contribute themselves an attack position monster in the field, especially summoning a Nouvelle ritual monster that is 1 or 2 levels higher from the hand or deck. So Bouillabaisse can special summon your level 2 or 3 dishes with this effect. On summon, this card can excavate the top 5 cards of your deck and add a Nouvelle card to your hand. Leveling up, 1 copy of Confira de Nouvelles, same tributing effect as Bouillabaisse, though on summon this card can destroy a spell or trap card. Also, using this in combination with the Meat Recipe Ritual spell, you can change all defense position monsters your opponent controls to attack position. Next is 1 copy of Guilty and 1 copy of Foie Glacia. Now, each of these ritual monsters can activate their effects to tribute an attack position monster when any card on the field is targeted by an effect or an attack. Guilty can level up to dishes 4 or 5, and Foie Glacia can level up to dishes 5 or 6. Guilty on summon can draw a card. Foie Glacia can shuffle back 3 cards from either graveyard, being something the opponent has in theirs, but more often than not, I use this card to shuffle my own resources back into the deck. Then have 1 copy of Banaminière de Nouvelles. I want to get to this dish as soon as possible, and most preferably summoned by the effect of Politi or Foie Glacia. With the effect on summon, you can search any Nouvelle card from your deck to the hand, and the effect that you contribute an opponent's attack position monster to special summon a level 6 from your hand or deck. This becomes a quick effect if it was summoned by the effect of another Nouvelle monster, hence why I like getting it out by Politi or Foie Glacia. And moving up to the main course, we have our copy of Belle Grille de Nouvelles. On summon, you can negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent controls, so not just monsters, and if it was summoned by the effects of Foie Glacia or Banaminière, you contribute all monsters your opponent controls. Belle Grille also comes equipped with a quick effect to tribute an attack position monster and special summon 1 copy of our Collector's Rare Hungry Burger from the hand or deck. So when you pair this card with Chef's Special Recipe Trap card in the grave, on summon you can once again tribute all monsters your opponent controls. It provides even more board presence and making the Vanilla Hungry Burger the boss monster it was always meant to be. Now, before moving on, so far I have no complaints about playing only 1 copy of each of these. I never want to clog up my opening hand. I'd much rather summon my rituals from deck, with the exception of maybe Bouillabaisse and sometimes Confira. As mentioned in my opening, this deck is like a 9.5 out of 10 as far as how much gas it's able to produce from only a few cards. It gains card advantage naturally and cycles your hand, deck, and extra deck exceptionally well. So with those strengths on your side, it makes more sense to try and compensate for things the deck doesn't do as well and find a healthy balance. Excuse me. Moving on, of course, we have our 3 copies of Poissonnière de Nouvelles. You'll love to see it. The deck plays 12 copies of this card, including itself. You can see it through Voici la Carte, Concours de Cuisine, and Diviner. On summon, you can either search a copy of the level 1 Ritual Monster Bouillabaisse or a recipe card from your deck to your hand. If it's tributed, you can place it in the Pendulum Zone, gains the effect that you can target a monster on either field and change its battle position, which we use to trigger the effects of our ritual monsters. Added support, of course, is our 3 copies of Diviner of the Herald. Very powerful ritual support, as we can send a copy of Herald or Elder Entity Entis to destroy a card or search ritual support while manipulating its level to 6. If it's tributed, we can summon a copy of Poissonnaire from our deck. We also have the option to send or get access to Trias Hierarchia. Ben 10 is always a fine option, but right now I'm pretending it's a copy of Trias Hierarchia, as that's how I've been testing the deck. I just haven't been able to get my physical copy yet, but we'll do very soon. Now for, I guess, a little bit of spice. Finally, the engine that provides gas, disruption, recursion, new menu options in the form of 3 Gen and 2 Ken. Very, very happy with these two. Whether you love it or you're skeptical, so was I until I started testing this and came to realize how much this deck does not care about its normal summon. 90% of the time, I will exhaust every option I have until all I have left is a normal summon. But by that point, I'm already cooking with gas. Normal summon either of these two. Jenny has the effect to summon Ken to your opponent's field, which that effect lets you draw 2 cards and then discard a card from your hand. Ken has the effect to summon Jen to the opponent's field, which will force your opponent to discard a card. Both of these cards will return to your hand as they, if they are still in the field at the end of the battle phase, regardless of whose side of the field they occupy. Also, great tribute fodder, providing another layer of usefulness for the deck. Now, final point is these 5 cards make my deck 45, so if you don't like them, you can just cut them. Nouvelles has no issue playing over 40 cards, as the deck can access what it needs very easily and through multiple routes of play. I'm including this package here not just because they fall into the monster category, but because they provide either tribute fodder for ritual summons, they recur themselves, draw power through Ken, and hand disruption with Jen, so I felt they would fall in nicely into the engine category here. Now, kicking off the engine spells, we have 3 copies of Pre-Preparation of Rites. This card really helps with our consistency, being able to search Bouillabaisse along with our copy of Recette de Poisson, or Confira accompanied by Recette de Viande. Now we have 3 copies of Voici la carte, today's menu. This card is not searchable within the archetype, which is why we're maxing on 3 copies. You reveal 2 Nouvelles monsters from your deck, being Poissonnaire or your choice of ritual monsters. Your opponent picks an option whether the card added to your hand was a Beast Warrior. You can get a copy of Fish Recipe from your deck or graveyard. If it were a warrior, you can add a copy of Meat Recipe from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Very important to remember that being able to dig a ritual support from the deck or graveyard is very helpful to ensure your recipes always stay in rotation. Next, I have 3 copies of Concours de Cuisine. Personally, my favorite starter. It's quick play spell, lets you special summon Poissonnaire to your side of the field and Pâtissier to the opponent's field in attack position. Get your search, and you have a free monster to level up with on the opponent's field. Its graveyard effect to increase the attack can also be used to target your monster, which is nice for triggering their effects. Now, I am still playing the 1 copy of Nouvelle Restaurant. I went back to testing 2 copies for a bit, but never found myself ever needing a 2nd copy, as if it goes to the graveyard, I can get it back, and if it gets banished, the deck can still function without it. But this card basically puts the deck at maximum function. You can access Restaurant by excavating through Bouillabaisse or search through Balaminiere. Upon activation, you can search a recipe card. It helps fix your broken hands by placing a ritual monster in your hand to the bottom of the deck to allow you to draw a card. And during the end phase, very important, you can place a recipe card and any other card in your graveyard to the bottom of the deck to draw another card. And each of these effects can be used once per turn. So now that brings us to our recipe cards, starting with a single copy of Recette de Poisson, a single copy of Recette de Viande, 1 copy of Staff Recipe, and 1 copy of the Chef's Special Recipe. Now, with Fish Recipe, you can ritual summon any of your Nouvelle ritual monsters. However, if you summon Bouillabaisse with Fish Recipe, you can add a copy of Meat Recipe from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Now, Recette de Viande is also used to summon our ritual monsters. However, summoning Confira with your copy of Meat Recipe will change all defense position monsters your opponent controls to attack, so we contribute them for effects. Staff Recipe is an interesting card. It can be used to target a monster if we want to trigger their effect ourselves. We can summon a token with the same level as the monster we target. And it can also be used as a spell speed 2 ritual summon if you can ritual summon a monster using the exact level of stars for tribute. Now, Chef's Special Recipe is our searchable negate anything counter trap. Absolutely incredible card that we can keep recycling. Plus, as I mentioned before, if you summon Hungerburger, you can banish this card from the grave to tribute as many monsters your opponent controls as possible. Now, that wraps things up for the main deck engine, leaving 12 slots for disruption cards. Beautiful. Nice little bump on my camera there. That's okay. As John likes to say from House of Champs, live editing done cheap right here. Awesome. Sorry about that. We're just going to keep going here. So, as I said, that wraps up the main deck, leaves 12 slots for disruption cards or anything you want to include. For this list, I am playing 3 Ash, 3 Imperm, 2 Veiler, 2 Chalice, 1 Book of Moon, and the 1 Called by the Grave. Now, a few items to note about these cards here. Ash, Imperm, and Veiler are all great cards that can be used to interrupt the opponent. Ash and Veiler can always be used for tribute fodder if they're needed. Ash, Veiler, and Imperm in particular are also very likely to leave an opponent's monster vulnerable in attack position, say after their normal summon or something like that. Chalice and Book of Moon are here not only because they are good cards, but they can be used to target anything at any time. If your opponent is actually reading your cards and trying to play around you, and you want to have access to cards that can target, so you can trigger your Nouvelle monsters effects for yourself. Now, Book of Moon, you might be wondering, goes against everything the deck stands for, wanting our opponent's monsters in attack position. But the main thing here with this card is 1A, it initiates a target, which can then trigger our effects. B, it can flip a monster face down, which is good for interrupting the opponent. And C, if that monster does happen to get flipped back face up, it goes into attack position anyway. And then you have your copy of Called by the Grave to do everything the deck needs it to do. So that does conclude the main deck profile. As mentioned before, it is a 45 card list, but you can certainly cut the Gen Ken package if you like to make it a nice even 40. Now, moving on to the extra deck, I'm just going to breeze through it quick right here. Starting with 2 copies of Pâtissier Couverture. Gosh, I love that name. This card is here for your interactions with Concours de Cuisine, usually summoned to your opponent's field in attack position. Next are our Diviner targets in 2 copies of Elder Entity Entis, 2 copies of Herald of the Arclight. Target a card, destroy a card on the field. If we really need it, we can target our own monsters. Then Herald is obviously here to search our ritual monsters or ritual spells. We then have 2 copies of Dynamondo. I was actually playing a 3rd copy of this card. It's that good. You make this link too using a ritual monster, and on summon you can target a ritual monster in your graveyard, shuffle it back into the deck, as well as any other card on the field. Plus, during the opponent's turn, you can tribute this card, special summon one of your ritual monsters, add it back to your hand, or special summon it. And I can't count the number of times I make this card. I wouldn't blame anyone for playing 3 copies if they wanted to. So these cards here are the most crucial in my opinion. I'm also playing the 1 Relinquished Anima, 1 Almirage, 1 Haggard Lizardos, which actually has a cool effect to manipulate the attack of an opponent's monster, potentially draw a card, 1 copy of the IP Masquerena, 1 copy of SP Little Knight, 1 copy of Underworld Goddess, and 1 copy of Typhon. Now that is it for the deck profile. I really hope you enjoyed it. If there's anything you like or don't like, please leave me a comment telling me what you think. Be sure to like the video if you did, share with your friends, hit subscribe and get notified for more content. As always, thank you for your support. I'm SacredCards. See you all in the next one.